Welcome to the SysAdmin Show, the podcast that explains everything sysadmins do and the technology they work with. I am your host, Dustin Raybrook, here to give a jumpstart to your IT career. Today's show is episode 25, Intro to PowerShell. Well, hey everybody, and welcome back. And this is going to be an In the Lab episode. Probably should have said that in the opening segment there. This is one of our In the Lab episodes where I'm actually released a YouTube video, or will be, hopefully, if everything works out, as part of this, so that you can see my screen, because it's going to get pretty detailed we're going to be getting into PowerShell today, and it's going to get pretty detailed with what's going on the screen. And you are welcome to continue listening if you're not currently if you don't currently have access to YouTube. This is still going to be part of the typical podcast release, but there's a lot more benefit if you're interested in PowerShell and getting introduced to PowerShell at all, to watch this on my YouTube channel. And I will put links to that in the show notes that you can find at sysadminshow.com. So let's talk about how this all got started. And it got started it's actually been a couple months. A listener to the show and a friend of mine who lives nearby sent me an email kind of outlining a project that he was working on that he needed some help with. And I am always one to help people out with technology when I can. So once our schedules worked out, which took a few months, he came over, and that was a couple days ago, with basically an environmentally hardened Windows computer. So like a touch screen with all the hardware and everything mounted inside a device that is very resilient to the environment because of where it's being used. And this computer has Windows 10 Enterprise on it, and it's running some special software that's going to control some devices. And what he's doing is he's developing the software that's running on it, that's controlling these devices. And what he needed help with was getting this software to the user experience on the computer to be as kind of transparent as possible. So, as in most situations, this computer could be powered off at any time, and the end goal was to have this thing, when you power it on, it automatically logs on as a user, just a generic user. There's no domain or anything involved here. And that once that user is logged in, it then automatically displays kind of like a loading screen, and just to kind of take up some time. And in the background, there's some services that are coming online. Once those services are proven to be up and running, it's actually a web service, so we can kind of query that. Then we will go ahead and launch the client application that then talks to that web service. And right away, I knew this is a perfect project for PowerShell. So a lot of this was pretty straightforward. He actually already kind of knew how to get the user to log in. And let's take a look at that now. I'm trying to remember the command that he ran. It was something along, I haven't actually done this before he mentioned it. It's like ngdp, oh crap. Something about security. So let's take a look here. Got a bunch of tabs going in Chrome. Let's open them up. Open up a new tab. And something like ProfWiz or something like that. Let's see. Now it's a tool I used to use. Hey, there it is. So what did we do? NetPLWiz, that's what he had me run. So that popped up over here. I'll bring it into view. All right, so NetPLWiz, I only have the one user on this computer, but if you uncheck this box, users must enter a username and password, and then hit apply, and then you put in your password here. This user does not have to log in anymore. It automatically logs that user in, which in a lot of ways can be considered insecure. But if that user has limited rights, which I'm an admin, so I'm not going to do this on mine. If that user has limited rights and you maybe don't want that user to know the password, then that could actually be pretty convenient. The next level that we did there was went ahead and under computer management, took that user and I changed the properties on it so that user could not change the password. So now they're automatically logging in. They don't know the password. The password never expires, and they can't change their own password. So this is fairly locked down, given that this is a very targeted machine. It's only going to kind of do this one thing. So they don't have administrative rights or any network rights to any other machines. All right. So we took care of that pretty quickly. He already knew how to do that, and we proved that out. So now we have a machine, Windows 10 machine, that's automatically logging in as a particular user once it boots up. So now we need to have this thing check for a specific service. And what I did was found, let's see here. Jumping around. I already have on my searches from before. I actually don't know if I have the search on here or not. Nope, I don't. All right, so there's a function in PowerShell. So you just go to Google, PowerShell, search website for text, right? That's what we want to do. And find specific sentence in a website using PowerShell. So this thing called invoke web request is what we ended up using, and it's pretty cool. So let's start just by talking about PowerShell for a second, because I called this episode Intro to PowerShell. And my favorite way, let's back up a bit. My favorite way to learn technology is to just jump in with a project. And I don't typically like to do too much of the theoretical projects like Hello World, right, where you're doing something only just to prove that the technology works. I like to tackle something that actually has some value to me or somebody I know. So I would recommend, if you're going to learn PowerShell, is to find a problem that you want to solve. Find something that you want to automate or something that you want to report on that has to do with Windows, and go about the process of then working backwards to find out how to do that with PowerShell. So now that that's out of the way, to get working with PowerShell, as long as you've got, if you're Windows 10, then you're in really good shape. Windows 7 can do this as well. It's just a little bit less embedded, and you may need to download some extra tools. You just create a new blank text document, and I recommend, let's see here. You see how my document said .text at the end of it? That's because I have a folder option turned on. So if we go to search and type in folder and then click on File Explorer Options, anybody who works with files a lot should have this changed by default. You want to change this. Under the View tab, there is Hide Extensions for known file types. That is on by default, and you need to turn that off because it prevents you from changing file types, which is a very common administrative function. So what we're going to do is now rename this new text document.txt, including the .text, the file type, to what do we want to call this? Demo.ps1. Now, .ps1, and this warning pops up. Are you sure you want to change? It's going to change the file type. Yes. And instantly, it becomes this icon that represents PowerShell scripts. PS1 is the extension for PowerShell. Once we've done this, especially in Windows 10, we can right-click, and we can either run it, open it, or we can edit it. If we click Edit, the PowerShell Editor pops up. And there we go. So this is fantastic because this gives us a spot where we can, if you've never used an IDE before, an IDE is basically a specialized piece of software just for editing programming code. And if you're using PowerShell, you are using a programming language, or a heavy scripting language. It's not exactly a programming language, but it's very powerful. And it's just a really easy way to get into it. And PowerShell is taking over all the Microsoft OSs and various applications. They're leaning more and more towards it. So it's something that would be good to not necessarily become proficient in, but to be aware of and to get some experience with, so that you can do some small things as needed. And the better that you become with it, definitely the more you will be able to push the envelope and succeed in IT. So basically a breakdown here. This little white area is where we're going to write commands. I'm going to define a variable with money sign, and I'll just call it, let's see, web data, I guess. Call it that. And it'd be good to set it equal to nothing. And cool thing here is I can hit play. So actually, let's set this to a value. Let's set it to high. And again, now we are doing a hello world example, which is exactly what I said I didn't want to do. But all right, it's saving the script. Now, right away, I get an error. This is exactly what happened to us when we were doing this a few days ago. By default, a system that is trying to run a script that is not signed by a trusted signer is considered unsafe, which is in a lot of ways true. So what we need to do is to tell this computer that we are okay with running unsigned scripts, and that is set dash. Actually, we have to do this as an admin. So let's talk about the elevated prompt for a second. If you right-click on the Start menu, and you'll see here Windows PowerShell. You also see Windows PowerShell Admin. That's the one we want. And you couldn't see it on the other window. It popped up the "Are you sure you want to elevate privileges" box. Now I'm an admin, and I can do set dash execution policy, and I just hit tab on that after I typed in EXEC, execution policy, and then we hit tab again. We have all signed, bypass, default, remote signed, or restricted. So we want remote signed. And we can say A, yes to all. And now it'll let us run anything we want. Now, depending on the system that you're using, who is on it, and how much you trust the content that's happening on the system, this could be very dangerous. So you want to not do this without really thinking about the consequences. But typically, I'm doing this on utility servers that are running script that I have written or modified and tweaked to run. And there's no other kind of dangerous activity happening in that system. No one's browsing the web to weird places on that system, so it's very unlikely to get to a spot where it's running a script that's not intended. All right, we're done with that for now. Let's hit this play button again, and no error, but also nothing happened. Well, that's because we didn't tell anything to happen other than to commit this text to a variable. If we wanted to see that text, it's still in that variable. We could just call that variable, call web data, and you can see as I'm typing, it remembers my variable names. Hit return, and it pops back on the screen. Hi, perfect. All right, so now if we want to start to follow the path that we followed to get this web scraper working, we look at this invoke web request, and what it's going to do is we're going to define, we've already got our web data. They use web response as their variable. We're going to make that equal to invoke web request, and then we're going to give it a website. Let's go ahead and do that. Web data equal to invoke web request. And then let's do www.google. Actually, do sysadminshow.com. Why not? All right, perfect. We hit play on this. All right, it worked. It took it an extra second. Let's dump that data and see what it does. Wow. All right, so it kind of gave us a bunch of gobbledygook about status codes and content types and HTML and all that. But down here, kind of in the in here, I'm seeing some more data about SysAdmin show and links and uploads and some other stuff. So there was a specific word that defined on the web page that we were scraping that defined if the service was running. And so we searched for that word. In this case, I'm just using this as an example. I don't see anything in here in particular that really matters, but let's say that we wanted to search for the word sysadmin and show, right? So now we need a way to take this variable, web data, and search it for a particular screen, for a particular string, to see if that string is there. And if it is, then we're going to have an affirmative, right, a positive result, and we can go ahead and launch the program that we want to launch. And if it is not, then we're going to want to wait a little while and then try again, and then try again, and then try again until it is true. So what do we need for that? We need a way to search a string or search a variable for a string. So let's go ahead and do that next. And I believe, let's see, we already used that one. I'm looking through my Chrome tabs here. All right, so after some Google searching, I found that we can do the like command in an if statement. So what we're going to do is an if statement, and then for our next line here, we're now on line 3 of this program, if, and then we do a couple of parentheses, and then we're going to do our variable, which is web data, like, go back to that for a second. Oh, I have to do dash like. And then if I do quotes, And the stars are wild characters, so that means anything could be around it. It doesn't matter where in the result it finds it. SysAdmin, make that capital, show. So if it finds in web data something that is like, so not an exact match, if that's all it finds, but something in there that matches SysAdmin show, even if it has other words around it, then it's going to run a command, and the command that it's going to run is going to be inside some curly braces, right? So I've got that going. Let's go ahead and say we want to write host, and writing to the host is just a way to output to the screen. And if I do put it in quotes, found it. And then just for our purposes, I'll do else. And then else means that if it doesn't find what it was looking for in the if statement, then it's going to write something else. Write host not ready. All right. So at this point, we are defining a variable. Actually, let's get high out of there. So we're initiating a variable, initializing a variable with no data, and then we're defining the content of sysadminshow.com into that variable, and now we're checking that variable with an if statement to see if it has sysadmin show somewhere in it. We're not doing a loop yet. Let's go ahead and hit save and then play on this. And right away, finishes and says found it, because we know that that text is in there. What if we change sysadmin show, right? That the string that we're searching for, what if we change that to be, actually, let's just misspell sysadmin show here. Or let's just make it google.com. All right, if we save that, it's going to reinitialize this variable. Let's hit play, and then it says not ready. So on google.com, surprisingly enough, it did not find the word or the phrase sysadmin show. So that tells me that this if function is working correctly. This seems like it's pretty functional. Now what we need to do is make that loop I was talking about, make it, because we don't know how long it's going to take for this background service to come online for when this website is actually available. In our case, we're controlling it because this is only an example. But let's go ahead and talk about loops now. And here it is, another Google search for PowerShell. And the amazing thing about PowerShell is it's so widespread and popular that you can type into Google, you could type PowerShell space, and then anything that you would want it to do, that it, even if it can't do it, you would pretty quickly find a result of PowerShell can't do this, or here's how you do this with PowerShell. And when we were going through this a couple days ago, the top result was, we did not always get the results we wanted right away with the first search or with the top result. Sometimes we had to go down 3 or 4 results or rephrase our search a little bit. But we ultimately did find what we wanted relatively quickly, within 5 minutes or so of searching for each one. And it really wasn't difficult to find the bits and pieces of what we needed to make this work. So now we need a loop, and the best way to do this that I know of, but I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are way better at this than I am. And this is just meant to be a basic kind of proof of concept, not some work of art here. So is a while loop, and all we're going to do is just say well, and then talk about if it's going to be equal to a value. And let's start. We're going to do this above our if statement. So let's say well, and again we do a parenthesis, and then we're going to do our do we need here? We need something that proves whether or not this has been completed or not. And what's the best way to do that? I'm actually trying to think of back to how I ended up doing this or not. I don't think I defined a separate variable, but that's one way to do it, would be define a variable, and then in your if statement, right, you could make that variable change and then search for the change in there. That's one way to do it. I think what I did was I actually just made it happen inside. Somehow I made it all happen inside the oh, you know what? I don't think I necessarily made an escape, because no, there must be an escape here somewhere. There, you have to get outside the loop somehow. And I'm having a hard time remembering how I did it. All right, so what we're going to do is well, and we'll just define a variable well, complete, and then dash any is not equal, and then we'll say 1, and parenthesis, we'll give it some curly brackets around the whole thing that we want to do. It has to go all the way to the end of the else statement, so it's like the very last line that we have at this point. So if the variable complete that we just defined is not equal to 1, then keep looping, right? And I should initialize this variable. Well, let's not worry about that right now. And what we do is, if we get the found it, right? If we get success, then I'll say variable complete equals 1. That should get us out. And one thing we will want to do here is add a little bit of a time delay, so that this thing isn't just running nonstop. If we know that we're waiting for a service to come up, that service probably needs an extra 10 seconds, maybe an extra 30 seconds, but it would make sense to check in maybe 10 or 15-second intervals. And a good way to do that is start sleep. And that is just with the start-sleep option. Think that if you just do start-sleep, it will do it. So we just type in start-sleep, and I believe it's already in seconds. Let's put it might be in milliseconds. Let's do dash seconds. Oh, there it is. Yep. And let's wait 10 seconds. And that's kind of long for our purposes. Let's just wait 1 second in between each one. So what we should see in this situation, because I still have my invoke web request going to Google, so that's going to fail constantly, and this is not something that's changing. So we should see this thing loop forever until I cancel it, constantly saying not ready, not ready, not ready every 1 second, if this functions properly. Let's hit play, and there we go. Even more than every 1 second. I mean, I just got 300 not readies in a matter of 3 seconds. Let's change that to 10 to start sleep, and let's hit play on that and see what happens. Nope, still going really fast. Oh, you know what? I put my start sleep in the wrong spot. So I put it inside the if statement for a successful found it. Well, it's not successful, so that start sleep is never executing. I need to put it inside my while loop, and I'll put it after my if and else statement down at the bottom. That's what was happening. It was never executing. All right, let's hit, forgot to stop the old one. Let's hit save and then play. And there we go. We get not ready, not ready, not ready, 1 second apart, as expected. Perfect. If I was to change this google.com to sysadminshow.com, save that and hit play, found it, and it empties, it exits, right? So now the last thing that we have to do, because we're past that looping stage, is actually run something. And I believe what we want to run, what I'll run in this situation is just like, I typically like to run the calculator if I'm trying to prove out a program or Notepad or something like that. I know a lot of times when they're doing vulnerability competitions, they like to run calc.exe as a proof of concept to say, hey, yeah, I took over this process and was able to launch the calculator. That just means that I can run anything I want, and the calculator is on pretty much every machine. So I like to use that for my testing as well, and then just substitute calc.exe for whatever application I'm actually working with. So looks like I can do start dash process and whatever I want to start. So if I add in here to my if statement, start dash process calc.exe, then I should get the calculator to run when I hit play. Hit play, and I'm waiting. Nothing's happened. Looking at all my screens, I see no calculator. I have done something wrong. What have I done wrong? I also didn't get a found it, which is interesting to me. Oh, no, that doesn't make sense. I would have refined my variable. Oh, you know what? This is coming back to bite me. I did not initialize complete. And because I've already ran this, I believe it successfully, I believe complete is still initialized, is still set to 1. So let's fix that problem. I knew I should have done it. I'm just going to set that to null or nothing. It's empty quotes. Let's hit play now. And there we go. You didn't see it pop up on this screen, but it popped up on the other screen. There is my calculator. Let's try that again. And there's my calculator. Excellent. And that's exactly the result we were looking for. Ultimately, we went through some other steps, tried to use the task scheduler to get this thing to run on logon. That ended up being more unsuccessful, and we weren't sure if it was because the account was an administrator or some other reason. But we found a workaround. Instead of using task scheduler, we just went to run and put in, what is it? Shell : startup, which brings you to this directory that is the startup folder. And if you put a file in here, it will run. We could not put the PowerShell file in here. That was just launching, opening it up like a text file. And I didn't want to mess around with anything else. So we actually put in a batch file. So if you go to new, again, text document, and this time, if we say launch.bat, this gets a new icon as well. This is what's called a batch file. And it's just a way of running a series of commands in Windows, kind of as the command prompt. And from here, we can run our PowerShell script. Trying to remember how we ran it. Let's see if I have that in my don't think I have this in my existing Google searches. So let's say run PowerShell from CMD or from batch. Do that. Use a batch file to run your PowerShell scripts. I don't think it's very anything special. You may be able to just write in there what you want to do. This is actually pretty cool. So PowerShell, and then the name of the script. Let's try that. Let's try just PowerShell and then the name of what we want to run. See if that works. Seems like they're running a lot of complicated stuff that we did not have to do. I'm not sure what that's about, but we did end up running something to minimize the screen as well. And we need ultimately we need the path. This needs to be a fully qualified path for where our script is, which comes to the point of where is our script right now? Right now, we can close it. I believe we just put it on my desktop. Well, when I'm ready for production, I would much rather that be on the C drive. So I typically will create a new folder on the C drive called scripts, where I put my PowerShell scripts. And now I've got a path that's much easier to get to. C/scripts/demo.ps1. And if that had spaces, we would definitely need quotes around it. It does not have spaces. We should not need quotes, but it will not hurt to put them on, and it's probably a good idea just to be safe. So that's there. I've saved it. This is my batch file. PowerShell space, and then in quotes, C:/scripts/demo.ps1. And if I click on this launch bat, so you didn't see it on the other screen, it launched it. Let me see if I can get CMD on this screen and then close it. Let's try this one more time. Hopefully, nope, it's still on the other screen. Yep, it launches it, it says found it, and then it launches the calculator. So that is working exactly like we want it to, which is awesome. The only other thing that we wanted to do, because this is a user-facing operation, was to hide that pop-up, that command prompt that pops up, to hide that from the users so that they're not seeing that when this loop is going, waiting to load. And so right on that same page we just looked at was the answer, which is window style hidden. I don't know if no profile is necessary, but let's find out. So if we paste, and it has to be, we found out this has to be before the PowerShell call. We tried it afterwards, first of all, and it did not function properly, did not work. So we put it in front of it, and then it started working. So now we've got PowerShell calling a window style hidden, which should be, hopefully, is exactly what we want. And then it should still launch the calculator. Let's see what happens. That hit it right away. So I did see a blip. I did see command prompt pop up and then go away. But that was it, and then it was gone. Let's try, maybe if I leave the command, an open command window here, maybe it'll open another one here and you can see this happen. Nope, it's still happening on my other screen. You're just gonna have to take my word for it, or write the script yourself and see what happens. And I'm gonna leave this here. This is what I'm gonna consider the end of the technical demo. And I'm hoping that by going through this process, it gave you kind of an intro to a little bit of PowerShell, what it can do. I'm guessing that if you've used PowerShell before, this was extremely rudimentary to you, and you're kind of wondering why I don't know what I'm doing. But I was trying to keep it simple because I'm thinking quite a number of you that maybe have not really, you've heard of PowerShell, you're aware that it's a thing that exists. Maybe you've even seen some code or run a program, a PowerShell script that somebody else wrote, but maybe you haven't gotten in there and actually written one yourself. And my goal was to show you how that process starts and to keep it as simple as possible. And I'm going to bring our code back here again, just so that you can see it. What I will do is, I'm not exactly sure how. I've never done an attachment before, but I'll find a way, even if I just have to paste it into the content of the blog post. I will put this on the this little script that we've created here. I'll put it in the blog post on the website, so that if you don't have to then go ahead and retype it all. If you want to just copy and paste this and do it yourself to try this out and then start tweaking it and seeing what you can make happen, then I think that'd be a great way to take it to the next level and really start to learn how all this stuff works. And another thing that we did not do at all, that when you start to script or a program, that is really important, is called commenting your code. Because you could write this and it all makes sense to you right now. You could come back to this in 6 months and you can't remember why you did this or what it was meant to do. And I'm trying to remember, in PowerShell, I think it's the hashtag, right? That's very popular these days. And so if I was doing that, I would do something like hashtag define, variables, and then I would go down here, and then under this one, for my invoke request, I would say, check website for, or scrape, it's really scrape, right? Scrape website, can't type, content to full, and then so on and so forth. You go to kind of each step of the way and put a comment as much as it makes sense, so that, and I believe you can even do it on a particular line. If you just do a hashtag after a line and say, check for, my computer's running away from me here. All right, check for specific string. All right, you can do it on a specific line as well. So that was really going to help you later on when you come back to slightly modify this and you're trying to remember what all these little things did. And this is a very simple example, so it's pretty easy to almost read it like plain English once you understand the syntax. But these become very complicated and can have functions and actually can have multiple PowerShell files calling each other and interacting and doing a lot. So it's definitely a best practice. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and let me know, right, if you have any questions on PowerShell on this particular example. If you have a hard time getting it working for whatever reason, let me know, and I can shoot you some ideas, hopefully. I definitely want to hear from you guys, questions about your education, career, technology, and any ideas for future episodes. And any feedback you have for me, you can send me emails, dustin@sysadminshow.com. You can follow me and message me on Twitter at SysAdmin Show. And until next time, I encourage you to never stop learning.